They tell you that you can't take it with you. Yet one man went into the ground with whiskey in one pocket and a handful of coins in the other, just in case he needed to make a call. A woman was sealed under 9 feet of concrete, still sitting behind the wheel of the car she loved most. And on a quiet night, 3 children placed a jeweled crown on a golden casket before the world was allowed to say goodbye. What did the most famous people on Earth refuse to leave behind? The answer is older than Hollywood itself. Kings once packed entire ships and armies for the afterlife. We only made the luggage smaller: a bottle, a guitar, a cape, a crown. Tonight we open the caskets the cameras were never allowed to show, and ask the only question that still matters. If you could take just one thing with you, what would it be? What? Sandra West. In March 1977, a 37-year-old Beverly Hills oil heiress named Sandra Eileen West died of a prescription drug overdose. She had never fully recovered from injuries sustained in a car crash months earlier. On the surface, it looked like another quiet Hollywood tragedy. What she left behind was not quiet at all. Sandra had married Texas oil heir Ike West in the mid-1960s. When Ike died suddenly in 1968, she inherited several $1 million and a taste for the dramatic. She kept a stable of Ferraris. The one she loved most was a powder blue 1964 Ferrari 330 America, chassis number 5055, one of only 50 ever built. She drove it the way other people wear perfume, as an extension of who she was. In 1972, she wrote a handwritten will that turned her death into a legal trap. Her brother-in-law, Saul West, would receive roughly $2 million only if he buried her exactly as ordered, dressed in a white lace Italian nightgown, seated behind the wheel of that Ferrari, the seat reclined comfortably. If he refused, his share dropped to almost nothing. Saul fought the will in court for months. He lost. A judge ordered him to carry out the instructions. While the legal battle dragged on, Sandra's body waited in a temporary crypt at Sunset Memorial Mausoleum in San Antonio, marked only by a thin strip of tape that read, "Sandra West." No flowers, no nameplate, just the waiting. The Ferrari arrived from Beverly Hills by rail under armed guard. 2 men stayed with it overnight. On the morning of May 19, 1977, workers sealed the powder blue 1964 Ferrari 330 America inside a gray wooden crate 19 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 9 feet deep. Sandra, dressed in the white lace nightgown specified in her will, was placed in the driver's seat with the backrest reclined comfortably. Her hands rested near the wheel. At Alamo Masonic Cemetery, roughly 300 people stood in the Texas heat and watched. Some had come out of curiosity. Some had come because they could not believe the newspaper stories. A few simply wanted to see how it was done. When the tall yellow crane swung the heavy crate over the open grave, the crowd fell quiet. No one spoke as the box descended 9 feet into the earth. Then 2 white cement trucks rolled forward and began pouring. The concrete rose around the crate in thick gray waves until nothing of the Ferrari remained visible. The funeral director later admitted the concrete was not only for structure, it was insurance against thieves who might try to dig the car up and drive it away. One onlooker told a reporter he had only come to see how it was done. Another simply stared at the rising concrete and said nothing. Within minutes, the grave looked ordinary again, just disturbed earth under a hot sky. Somewhere beneath it, a woman still sat behind the wheel of the car she had refused to leave behind. Her longtime housekeeper later told the court that Sandra had been fascinated by Egyptian burial customs, the idea that the dead should take their most valued possessions into the next life. Sandra did not want to be parked. She wanted to keep driving. The simple stone that marks the plot today gives no hint of what still rests beneath it. Only the people who know the story understand the final image, a woman who refused to leave the wheel, sealed forever in the car that had once made her feel free. 2. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra died on the night of May 14, 1998, at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 82. That evening, his wife Barbara had gone out for dinner with friends at Morton's. Around 9:14 p.m., a 911 call came in from the Beverly Hills mansion. Paramedics reached him fast. The streets were unusually clear because half the city was home watching the Seinfeld finale. By 9:35 p.m., the ambulance was at the hospital. Barbara made it in time to hold his hand. At 10:50 p.m., doctors pronounced him dead of a heart attack. His manager was there. His children were not yet in the room. 6 days later, the family buried him at Desert Memorial Park near Palm Springs, next to his parents. They dressed him in a blue suit, pink shirt, and red and blue tie. Then, before the lid closed, his 3 children filled the pockets with the things that had defined the private man behind the public voice. Nancy slipped in a bottle of Jack Daniels, the whiskey he had called the nectar of the gods for more than 50 years, the same bottle that had sat in every dressing room on every tour. Frank Jr. added a pack of Camel cigarettes and a Zippo lighter, the 2 constant companions of the stage and the late nights. Tina placed 10 dimes in his pocket. Those dimes were not a joke. They were the oldest fear he still carried. On the night of December 8, 1963, 19-year-old Frank Sinatra Jr. was resting in a dressing room at Harrah's Club Lodge in Lake Tahoe after a show. 2 men knocked, pretending to deliver a package. They blindfolded him, tied up his friend, and drove him away. The kidnappers demanded $240,000, roughly the equivalent of more than $2 million today. For the next 3 days, the elder Sinatra received a series of instructions that forced him from one payphone to another. The ransom talks happened on public phones. He followed every call. On December 11th, the money was dropped. Hours later, his son was released unharmed near Mulholland Drive. From that night forward, for the next 35 years, Frank Sinatra never left the house without a roll of 10 dimes. Payphone rates rose. He still carried dimes. He refused to be caught unable to make a call. They also added Tootsie Rolls, Cherry Lifesavers, and a dog biscuit. Small comforts for a man who liked to be prepared. The whiskey is the detail everyone remembers. The 10 dimes are the detail that still hurts. Even in death, old Blue Eyes wanted change for the phone. 3. Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis died of cardiac arrest on the night of September 29, 2010, at his home in Henderson, just outside Las Vegas. He was 85. For years, his lungs had been fragile from a lifetime of smoking he had quit 3 decades earlier. On the final night, the heart simply stopped. 5 days later, on the morning of October 4th, more than 400 people filled the chapel at Palm Mortuary. Fans lined up outside long before the doors opened. Inside, 7 of his own colorful paintings stood on easels. A photograph of the young, dark-haired actor was projected on a screen. An American flag covered the closed casket. Jewish prayers were spoken. Then a film montage played, clips from Spartacus, Some Like It Hot, even an animated cameo in the Flintstones. And the room laughed through tears. His widow, Jill, stood and spoke of the man she had loved for 16 years. She listed, almost like a packing list, the things that would travel with him. His daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, who had been estranged from him for years before they reconciled, grew emotional as she described a father who was a little meshuggah, a little crazy, but always full of life. "All of us got something from him," she said. "I, of course, got his desperate need for attention." Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had once been encouraged by Curtis when Hollywood told the bodybuilder his accent would keep him off the screen, rose and spoke of mentorship and friendship. Kirk Douglas and Kirk Kerkorian were among the honorary pallbearers. Then the family packed the casket the way a man packs for a long trip he does not expect to return from. Tony wore his favorite white shorts and the much-mended white sweater he loved. An Armani scarf was placed around him. A well-worn Stetson rested under his arm. Inside the coffin went the rest of the life he still claimed, driving gloves. Jill said he had kept plotting ways to get his license back even after he could no longer drive. A model of his 25th anniversary Trans Am, Navy medals from the war years, gold coins, 2 watches, sunglasses, a sleep mask, paintbrushes and paints and sketch pads from the years he had turned to art, a yarmulke from a Budapest synagogue he had helped restore, stones he had collected on his travels, including a few from the grave of Dodi Fayed, his grandson Nicholas's baby shoes, a bag of letters and photographs, a DVD of his favorite film clips, 7 packets of Splenda, the exact number he poured on almost everything, 1 Percocet tablet, and the ashes of his dog, Jack, and his iPhone, the device he called his IV. There was barely room left for the man himself. The list is almost overwhelming, and that is the point. It refuses the neat summary of a Hollywood obituary. Here was the former pretty boy star who became a serious actor, the sailor, the painter, the grandfather, the man who still needed the small comforts of ordinary days. When the lid finally closed, Tony Curtis took almost everything that still felt like home. Outside, under the Las Vegas sun, the Navy Honor Guard folded the flag and presented it to Jill. His grandson Nicholas stood nearby wearing a black Stetson of his own. The grave was closed. The reception for 200 invited guests moved to the Luxor. And somewhere beneath the desert ground lay a casket so full of a single life that it seemed less like a burial than a final, stubborn claim. I was here, and this is what mattered. Forn, Bela Lugosi. On the evening of August 16, 1956, Bela Lugosi died in his sleep at a small apartment on Herald Way in Los Angeles. He was 73. The official cause was a heart attack. His fifth wife, Hope, found him when she came home from work. The man who had once made the world afraid of a cape and a voice had almost no money left. About $1,900 in the bank, a few cheap lots, and a career that typecasting had slowly eaten alive. 2 days later, at Utter McKinley Mortuary on Hollywood Boulevard, they laid him in state in full Dracula clothes, the tuxedo, the ring, a black cape. Ed Wood was one of the pallbearers. The press was told it had been Lugosi's dying wish. That was not true. His 1954 will never mention the costume. The decision belonged to his fourth wife, Lillian, and their son, Bela Jr. They believed it was what he would have wanted. The cape in the coffin was not the original from the 1931 film. That one stayed with the family, later failed to sell at auction, and eventually went to the Academy Museum. What went into the ground was a tribute, the role that had made him immortal, and in the end, almost unemployable. Lillian paid for the plot and the stone at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. Hope paid for the casket and the service. Frank Sinatra did not pick up the bill. That story is a myth. The marker in the grotto is almost painfully simple. Beloved Father, no fangs, no title, no count. So the contradiction sits there forever. The stone says Father. The coffin still says Dracula. The man who spent the last years of his life trying to escape the cape was sent into the earth wearing it, not because he asked, but because the people who loved him could not let the world forget who he had been. 5. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart died on January 14, 1957, of cancer of the throat. He was 57. 3 days later, 650 people filled All Saints Episcopal Church in Beverly Hills. 3,000 more stood in the street. The body was not in the church. He had asked to be cremated. On the altar rail, at Lauren Bacall's request, sat a small model of his boat, the Santana, the 55-foot yawl that had meant freedom and the sea to him. John Huston spoke about his courage. A priest read Tennyson's Crossing the Bar. Before the ashes went into the silver urn, Bacall placed one object inside it, a small gold whistle. Years earlier, before they married, Bogey had given her that whistle as a private reminder of their first film together, To Have and Have Not. In the movie, she leans in the doorway and says the line that still belongs to them. You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow. Some accounts say the whistle was engraved with a version of that invitation. If you want anything, just whistle. It was not a prop for the cameras. It was the smallest object in this entire story, and maybe the heaviest. No guitar, no car, no bottle. Just a piece of gold that meant, I am still here, call me. Bogart's last words to her, according to one biography, were simple. He kissed her, patted her cheek, and said, "Goodbye, kid." She answered the only way that made sense. She put the whistle where he could still hear it. 6. Bob Marley and Dimebag Darrell. 2 men, 2 guitars, 2 completely different kinds of goodbye. Bob Marley died in Miami on May 11, 1981 at 36 after cancer had already taken too much. On May 21st, Jamaica gave him a state funeral that was half church and half concert, 100,000 people. Rastafarian colors along 60 miles of road from Kingston to 9 Mile, the hill beside the one-room shack where he was born. In the bronze casket, a red Gibson Les Paul, a Bible open to Psalm 23, and a stalk of ganja that his widow, Rita, placed with him. He was dressed in blue jeans and a cap, dreadlocks falling over his shoulders. The psalm was not decoration. "The Lord is my shepherd. I will fear no evil." He had been baptized in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church late in life. Some Rastas saw it as a betrayal. The family sent him with both worlds at once: the guitar that was his voice, the book that was his shelter, and the herb that had been sacrament. 23 years later, on December 8, 2004, Dimebag Darrell Abbott was shot on stage in Columbus, Ohio. He was 38. He had asked to be buried in a Kiss casket. Gene Simmons sent his own. Dime had learned rock from Kiss. Ace Frehley's face was tattooed on his chest. Ace had signed it. Dime had the signature tattooed over so it could never wash off. Then Eddie Van Halen arrived. Weeks earlier, Dime had offered $30,000 for one of Eddie's striped guitars. Eddie said he would make him a special one. After the murder, Dime's girlfriend, Rita Haney, asked for yellow and black. Darrell always said that was your toughest guitar. On the day of the funeral, Eddie did not bring a copy. He brought the original Bumblebee from the back of Van Halen 2, rusted strings and all. He told her, an original should have an original. He could not look in the casket. He wanted to remember Dime from the night they met. Rita put the guitar in, kissed Dime's forehead and said, "See, baby, you didn't get a replica." There were bottles of Crown Royal in there too. The drink, the riff, the childhood band. Marley took the instrument that had carried a nation. Dime took the instrument that a living hero could not keep. One goodbye was a country's. The other was a brother's. Both left the same thing in the dark. A guitar that would never be played again, and a reason it still belonged there. 7. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson died on June 25, 2009. The world got its public goodbye almost 2 weeks later at Staples Center, a global television event of speeches, tears, and stars who had not been in the same room with him in years. Elizabeth Taylor stayed away. She said her grief was not a public event. She waited for the real one. That real goodbye came on September 30, 2009 at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. Private. Delayed more than an hour because the family motorcade was late. About 200 people. White chairs in the late summer heat. An orange moon from nearby wildfires hanging over the cemetery. The Jackson brothers, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, Randy, in matching black suits, red ties, black armbands, and one crystal-embedded glove each. They carried the golden casket. Michael's 3 children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, stepped forward and placed a jeweled crown on top of it. Gladys Knight sang, "His eye is on the sparrow." Clifton Davis sang, "Never can say goodbye." Then they carried him into the great mausoleum. That is the part the cameras were allowed to record from a distance. What actually rode inside the casket is harder to pin down. LaToya Jackson gave the most detailed public account of what went into the golden casket. In a September 2009 interview with Barbara Walters for ABC's 2020, she described her brother as looking absolutely fabulous. He was dressed, she said, in all-white pearl beads draped across him and a large gold belt, like a belt that you win being a boxer. His hair and full makeup had been done carefully. A pair of his favorite sunglasses and one of the iconic white sequined gloves were placed in the casket with him. That glove carries its own quiet contradiction. Longtime costume designer Michael Bush, who created the final outfit, later said Michael had once told him, "If anything ever happened, please don't put that glove on me. That glove is only for Billie Jean." So the glove went into the coffin, but not onto the hand. It remained a stage prop even in death, present but not worn. Other small acts belonged to the children. Paris, then 11, placed colored playstones on her father's body and wrapped a cheap mood necklace around his wrist, a heart that changes color with temperature. She kept the other half for herself. "On Daddy it will be blue because he is cold," she said. "On me, it's purple." The 3 children also placed the jeweled crown on top of the closed casket during the September 3rd private service at Forest Lawn, the one documented image the world was allowed to see. Unlike Frank Sinatra's Whiskey and Dimes, which the family described with consistent clarity, the full inventory of Michael's casket remains partly a family story. LaToya's interview is the primary source. No independent inventory was published. The crown is confirmed by multiple contemporary reports. The glove, the sunglasses, the pearls, the gold belt, and the children's stones rest on the word of the people who were inside the room. What emerges is not a verified museum list, but a deliberate image. The king of pop sent into the dark, still looking like the figure the world recognized. Sequins, gold, sunglasses, one white glove. While the private gestures of his children, stones, a split necklace, a crown, stayed closer to the body than any public tribute. The contrast is the point. Millions watched the Staples Center Memorial. Only a few hundred stood beside the golden box on that September night. The bodyguards who had lived with him in the final years later said the celebrity turnout at the private service bothered them. Too many people acting as if they had kept a relationship they had not maintained. The people who had actually been there, the ones who still visited when the house was quiet, were fewer. So the final image is both simple and strange. A golden casket, a crown placed by 3 children who had just lost their father, and, somewhere inside or beside him, according to one sister, the gloves and glasses that had once been armor against the world. Whether every item made it into the crypt or not, the gesture is the same as every other story in this video. The living trying to send the dead into the dark, still looking like themselves. The public got a spectacle. The children got the last word, and the king of pop left the way he had lived for so long, behind gates, with only a handful of people close enough to see what was really placed on the lid. Not every goodbye needed a crane or a cement truck. Some of the most revealing objects were almost small enough to miss. Leonard Bernstein, the man who conducted West Side Story into history, was buried in 1990 with a piece of amber, a lucky penny, a baton, a copy of Alice in Wonderland, and a pocket score of Mahler's Fifth Symphony. Even in death, he wanted the music close and the childhood story closer. Roald Dahl went into the ground in 1990 with the tools of his trade and his appetite. HB pencils, the same ones that wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, along with chocolate, snooker cues, a bottle of Burgundy, and, according to his family, a chainsaw, in case he needed to cut his way back. President John F. Kennedy collected scrimshaw. After Dallas, Jacqueline placed in his coffin a 9.5-inch whale tooth engraved with the presidential seal, a Christmas gift she had commissioned for him in 1962. He took the best piece of the collection with him. George Burns, who lived to 100 and never stopped talking about Gracie, was buried in 1996 with 3 of his favorite cigars in the breast pocket. The smoke had always been part of the marriage. He left with enough for the next set. These were not spectacles. They were quiet inventories of a life. A baton, a pencil, a carved tooth, 3 cigars. Proof that the impulse does not require fame. It only requires something you still cannot bear to leave behind. Look at the pattern and it stops being strange. The Ferrari was control. Sandra West refused to be parked. She wanted the wheel in her hands even after the last road ended. The 10 dimes were unfinished fear. Frank Sinatra had lived 35 years ready for a phone call that might never come. He left still prepared. The gold whistle was love reduced to its purest object. Lauren Bacall did not need a speech. She needed Bogey to hear her one more time. The jeweled crown on Michael Jackson's casket was the last title, given not by the industry or the public, but by the 3 children who had the only right that still mattered. We tell ourselves, these are eccentric final wishes. They are not. They are sentences the living never finished saying out loud. Take this. Stay yourself. Do not forget who you were when you were ours. The dead do not need the bottle, the guitar, the cape, or the crown. We need to believe the journey is not completely empty. We need the comfort of packing one last bag. That is why the custom survives from Egyptian tombs to forest lawn. The objects change. The need does not. So here is the only question that remains. If you could put only one thing in the box, not the will, not the jewelry the family will argue over, but the single object that would still feel like you, what would it be? Be specific in the comments. A photograph, a book, a guitar pick, a pair of shoes, a letter never sent. Tell us. If this is the kind of story you want, the part the tribute specials leave out, the quiet decisions made after the cameras are gone, subscribe. Next time we go even closer to the casket, because the dead don't need the stuff. We do.